The last component to go into our header is the navbar, and we're going to start by styling the elements that encompass our navbar. So I'm going to switch over. I have my index page open, and I'm going to switch over to my style sheet up here on the top where you see the bubble next to the source code. I'm going to click on that. So I open up my style sheet, and I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom down here and place my cursor after that closing curly brace on line 49 right after the nameplate ID. And I'm going to hit the return key a couple of times because we're starting a new section here. And we're going to start this off with a comment, and this comment is going to show us that these are the navigation styles, and that way we can find it easier later on if we need to. Need to put a space in there. Okay, and I'm going to hit the enter return key here, so I'm down on line 52. So like like some of the other pieces here, we are floating and we are nesting our nav bar inside our header. So if you remember right, just kind of a quick review. The header is a 940 pixel wide container, and inside that container we have a nameplate container, and this container we are floating it left, and the width of it is 440 pixels. So our navigation container can only be 500 pixels. If we take 940 minus 440, that gives us the 500. So that's how we're going to start this. We're going to create an ID called nav-wrap and open up a curly brace, and we are floating this to the left. So we're going to type in float left, and then we need to give this the width like I just said earlier. It needs to be 550 pixels wide, or actually I'm sorry, 500 pixels wide. That'll give us the amount of room that we need for the number of navigation links that we have. Design wise, navigation bars, it all kind of boils down to your space, and that can be a challenge sometimes when you have either large words or you have a lot of navigation links, and that can often dictate your layout and the type of navigation system that you create. We have 4 navigation links for this, for our navigation, and it's a relatively simple navigation menu. We're going to keep it nice and light. We're going to use a list style navigation system, and add a couple of key features to give us some interactivity. So we're going to, next after width, we're going to go to our height, and we're going to give this a height of 40 pixels, and we're going to position this from the margin top here. I'm just gonna target margin top. Now what I could do is do this long form, but pretty much I just want to space this down from the very top of our header so that it somewhat looks like it's centered within our header overall. You might have to play around with this value depending on what height you've gone with your header and your logo and all those kinds of things. But this is the value that I've played around with in my mock-up, so I already know what size to go with here. So I'm going 75 pixels from the top there so that it somewhat centers in my header. Then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then close that out with a curly brace. Next, I'm going to create another ID, but this one is going to be applied to our list. We're going to use an unordered list to do that. So this ID is going to be called navbar, and we're going to open up a curly brace here. And the only thing that we're going to really apply to this ID is that the list style is going to be none, so we don't end up with any bullet points since we're using the unordered list element. And I'm going to hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. And then and after that, we are going to apply or add some styling to the li element. So first we start off with the ID navbar and then li. And the only thing we're doing with this element is we're going to float our list items to the left so that they appear horizontal instead of vertical. Then the next element I'm going to target is the A element, and this is going to be the bulk of where we're going to apply our styling, because the A element is what drives our navigation menu since they're all links. So we're going to start off with that same ID of navbar, and we're going to go LIA. If you remember, right in the last year when we did our first year's portfolio, the A element is nested inside of our list item element, which is inside that ID of navbar. So we just kind of work backwards there. So this is our link, that's the list item, and then the ID that we're targeting in where it's been nested. So we're going to open up a left curly brace, and we're going to set our display here to block, so that way it fills out the entire space when we have a hover property. And then next we're going to style or space out each of our navigation links here so that they have a little bit of space in between. The navigation menu that we're creating here is a little bit different than your last year's year one. In the year one portfolio design, the navigation menu looks more of like a block, more of a button. We're going away from that a little bit. We're going to make this a little bit more modern, a little bit more free-forming in our navigation menu. So we want to spread these out just a little bit so there's some spacing between each of our nav links. So we're going to do that using margin, and we're not going to worry about the top margin, but we do want to space it out left and right, and I'm going to go ahead and apply a 15 pixel margin value left and right so that these are nice and spread out, and gives our navigation menu kind of a nice airy look. Next, I'm going to add some padding to the top and bottom of our text here, so that it spaces out just slightly, and this will help with a hover effect that we're going to apply here in just a minute. Oops, didn't mean to end that so soon. We need to do 10 pixels 0 there. Sorry about that. So we have padding top and bottom 10 pixels, left and right 0, and our margin is kind of the opposite. We have 0 top and bottom and then 15 left and right. Then I'm going to hit the enter return key, and we're going to make our font size here. We're going to make it nice and large, so we're going to go to a 1.5 EM font size. You are welcome to use pixels if you'd like on this, and you'd certainly be okay to do so, but we're going to go with the 1.5 EM value, and we're going to give our navigation links a gray color. So we're going to start with the pound symbol and then D for just a really nice light gray, because that'll kind of work with our overall, the color scheme that I have going for this design mock-up. It's kind of a grayish, white, very kind of subdued type color palette. And then enter return key, and then last but not least, because the A element by default has a text decoration of underline, so we want to take that text decoration and just say none. We don't want to have our text look like it's underlined like a regular link. So then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. Okay, next on my list here is to add the hover pseudo class to our A element, and this will give a little bit of interactivity to our navigation menu. So when your user hovers over your link, it'll do something, so to speak. And we're going to do a couple things to this. You are welcome to change this up as you see fit, but it'll make sense here in just a sec. So I'm going to hit the enter return key, and we are on navbar again. Oops, need to spell that correctly. And LIA, just like we did previously, but this time we're going to add the pseudo class hover. So I'm going to type in a colon and then hover, and then I'm going to open up a curly brace. Now I've done a little bit of pre-design work already, checking out color schemes, and I've also created images for certain parts of my design. So I know the color that I'm picking here is an orange color that I have picked from. If you look at I'm going to go ahead and go back here to our example where we have our year 2 intermediate tutorials, I'm going to click on the click here for completed example, and I'm going to show you where I'm pulling things from and what we're working on right now. So this yellowish color I've pulled directly from this color right here. I have brightened it just a little bit. I've given it a shade or two brighter because when I tested it in my mock-up, it was just a little too dark with this gray, so I went ahead and added a shade, went a shade up so it would appear brighter. The other thing that we're going to add is, see how when you hover over this you have a nice thick line on the bottom, and that's not a border, that's actually a background image that we've added, and I've created that background image in Photoshop, and it's a simple 5 pixel by 5 pixel square basically. It's very small, and I just filled it in with the same color that I pulled from this graphic right here. So I'm going to tab back over to Dreamweaver here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in color and pound symbol, and that orange color that I have selected is FDC 659. So there you go, you can kind of see how it's a little bit lighter than our example, and then semicolon, and then I'm going to add that background image as I just talked about. So the background image, since it's only 5 pixels by 5 pixels, it's a very small file size, and so it actually makes this hover feature pretty light and easy for a browser to load. But what we need to do, since it is only 5 pixels by 5 pixels, is we need to repeat it and place it in the right place. So I'm going to select the URL option here and go to my images folder in my piece, and you can see that the one that I'm looking for here is just called navhoverbar.png, and like I said, it's just a 5 by 5 pixel background image. And what did that say? What do we have an issue here? Would you like to copy? No, I don't want to copy that. I wonder if for some reason, oh, I know what's going on. I have the wrong site listed here. So we're going to back this up real quick. I'm going to switch over. This is my completed example. So I'm going to switch over to my portfolio year 2, the one that I'm supposed to be in for the tutorial. And so sometimes this happens. Oops. Not going to do that. Got highlighted on there. Good thing we were in Dreamweaver. It didn't accidentally delete it for us. Kind of having some issues here in this tutorial, but we'll get through it. Alright, after the background we're going to type in the semicolon. I'm going to delete that out, retype it in so my code hint comes up so I can select my background URL. I'm just going to double check to make sure that I'm in the right folder, so I'm going to go to my design piece. Actually, I think it's in the desktop. And we are looking for one column there. That's the completed version. There's the tutorial version. There we go. Sinks Jeremy portfolio, images, and there's that nav hoverbar PNG, the one that I want. And I shouldn't get that error message this time, so that'll be helpful. And next, right after this, I'm not quite done with this line. Remember, since it's only 5 pixels by 5 pixels, I need to repeat it. But I just want to repeat it on the x-axis. X-axis, say that 10 times fast, because it's only going one way. We don't need it to go both ways, Y up and down. We just need it to go left and right. And we want to start it on the bottom left of the background image area, and that'll give us that effect of when you hover over it, that bottom bar will appear down there at the bottom. And then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then close that out with a curly brace. So now that I've got my styling all set up, pretty simple navbar here. Really, we only have the one, just a few styles to put in there. So that's what makes this a nice, easy, simple navigation menu, nice and light, and fast to load in a browser. So next I need to go over to my source code and put this in so that I have my navbar set up. So it's going right after the nameplate ID, so I just need to locate where that closing div tag is. So if you look at right here on my screen, you'll see that I'm highlighting that section, and then we floated that nameplate to the left, and so we're floating our nav container also to the left and around it. So I'm going to place my cursor right after that closing div tag of the nameplate, hit the enter return key, left caret, div id nav wrap is the one we're going with here. That's what's going to set us up for that container. Right caret and then enter return key, left caret /. So I close that out right away. So that's going to set us up for our container piece. And then next I just need to insert my list for my navigation menu. So I'm going to tab in to indicate that this is nested within this div container. And we're going to start off with the left caret, and we're going to type in the UL element for unordered list, and we're going to apply that navbar ID to that unordered list element. So UL ID and equals navbar, and then right caret, and then enter return key a couple of times, left caret / to close that statement out, or to close that tag out. Next, I'm going to tab in, and we're going to do some copying and pasting here to save ourselves some time. So I'm going to type in the left caret and type in the LI element, the list element, right caret, left caret / to close that out. Okay, so that's going to start our first item there, and then I'm going to type in a left caret a space href, and we don't have these pages created yet, so for now I'm just going to put in a pound symbol as a placeholder to indicate that this is a link, and then right caret, and then left caret /. So you can kind of see our structure here. I haven't put any text in yet. I haven't put in a link yet. I've just put in the pound symbol to indicate that this is a link. We haven't created those pages yet, so we can't actually link those pages until we do that. And we're not going to link those pages until we create them. And the reason why we haven't created them yet is because we're creating our shell first. And once we create once we complete the shell for our basic structure, a basic layout for our pages, then we will create the rest of those pages based on that shell, and then we'll link our whole entire navbar. But in the meantime, we're just going to create the navbar as if it's there. It's just not going to work. So we have 4 links. We have 4 navigation menu items. And before I do anything, I'm just going to copy this line so I don't have to retype each one of these in turn. So I'm just going to hit the enter return key and then paste that in there 3 more times so that I have 4 link items there, all with the hashtags to go in there. And then next I'm going to make sure that I put the appropriate text to go for each one of those navigation links. So the first one is resume. You notice that I placed my cursor in between the A element there, the opening and closing A element. The second one is your education, and I'm just going to leave it as education this time. I'm not going to add like education plan or anything like that. I'm just going to keep it real simple as to go with our kind of modern and simplistic minimalist design. And then the third link is going to be for internship. Let's type that in correctly. I've played around with a couple of different titles for this link, like internship experience, different types of things, and what I found is that for lengthwise it actually looks better with just internship. So that's why I'm going to keep it for now. And then last but not least, we have our showcase page. Alright, so I'm going to save this, and I want to double check my work, so I'm going to preview this in a browser. I'm going to click on the preview in Firefox here, and I just want to make sure that everything works. So you'll notice that as I hover over it, we have that bar show up, and the spacing here in between the left and right, remember we did a left and right margin value, that's 30 pixels. That 30 pixels allows us to have that spacing between each navigation length, and also keeps that bar that we've inserted on the bottom the same length as the text of our navigation link. So it's a pretty clean, pretty simple setup here. Next in our tutorial, we're going to go ahead and insert our footer and also the content area, but we're not going to do much with the content area because our content area is going to change with each of our pages. So we're just going to initially put in a 1 or 2 lines of code for our content area just to mark where it's going to be, and then we're going to finish it out with our footer. And after we get our footer done, we are going to move into creating the rest of our pages for our portfolio and then linking our navigation bar up, and then from there it'll be we'll go to each individual page and fill out content for each individual page.